I'm Tom, a lifelong storyteller, history obsessive, and voice of the forgotten frontier. I've spent years chasing the real stories behind America's outlaws. Beyond the headlines, beyond the legends. Billy the Kid isn't just a name in an old ballad. He's a mirror of youth, defiance, and the raw dust of history. I'll be your voice through this journey, one shot at a time, one truth at a time. Welcome to Billy the Kid, the boy-faced killer. A face too young to kill. It happened on a quiet summer night in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, July 14th, 1881. Inside a darkened adobe house, lit only by moonlight through a cracked window, a gunshot rang out. The bullet struck a young man in the chest. He staggered backward, fell, and within seconds, he was gone. His name was Billy the Kid, or at least that's what the world called him. He was 21 years old, no older than a college student today, too young to vote, too young to drink, but old enough to kill, and to be killed. The man who pulled the trigger? Pat Garrett, a sheriff, a former friend, a man tasked with ending a legend. There was no trial, no last words, no standoff under the sun, just a single shot in the dark. Some say Billy had it coming, others say he never had a chance. So who was Billy the Kid? A cold-blooded killer with 21 bodies to his name? A reckless teenage thief who played too long in a lawless land? Or a misunderstood orphan, pulled into war, corruption, and blood, simply because he was born in the wrong time, in the wrong place? History doesn't agree. Neither does America. To some, Billy was a monster, a smiling face hiding a dead man's aim. To others, he was a martyr, a boy caught in the gears of greed, power, and politics. One thing is certain. Billy the Kid wasn't just a person. He was a reflection, a mirror held up to a fractured country still healing from civil war. A reminder that sometimes the line between outlaw and legend is drawn in ink and redrawn in blood. This podcast is not just about the bullets, or the jailbreaks, or the dusty saloons where lawmen whispered his name. It's about the boy who became a name, the name that became a myth, and the myth that refuses to die. We'll walk back through the broken towns of New Mexico, through the cattle wars, the betrayals, the shootouts. We'll meet the people who followed him, the ones who feared him, and the one who ended him. You've heard the songs. You've seen the movies. Now, it's time to hear the truth. This is the story of Billy the Kid, the boy-faced killer. And it begins with a single shot from the man who once called him friend. Chapter 1. Henry McCarty, the Invisible Boy. Before he was Billy, he was no one. Not a gunman, not an outlaw, not a legend, just a boy. Born Henry McCarty, sometime around 1859. We don't know exactly when, and that says everything, doesn't it? Even his birthday is a mystery. That's what happens when you're born poor, born invisible, in the back streets of New York City, or maybe Indiana. History can't agree, because history didn't care. His mother, Catherine, was an Irish immigrant, a single mother, tough, kind, and dying slowly from tuberculosis. She moved west with her 2 sons, hoping the dry air of New Mexico might save her. It didn't. They arrived in Silver City, a desert town full of miners, gamblers, and promises too big to keep. By the time Henry was a teenager, his mother was coughing blood into a handkerchief. And then, one day, she stopped coughing altogether. Just like that, he was alone. No father, no home, no one to protect him from a world that chewed up boys like him and spit them out as ghosts. Henry tried to survive the honest way. He washed dishes, cleaned hotel rooms, swept floors. But no one gave second chances to skinny orphans with dirty hands. He was smart, too smart. He could read, he was polite. People liked him at first. But poverty wears down charm. And soon, Henry started to steal. Just food, just scraps, just enough to not starve. The sheriff didn't care. They threw him in jail, a cell barely bigger than a broom closet. No trial, no defense, no mother waiting outside. And that night, Henry McCarty made his first real decision. He escaped, slipped up the chimney, and disappeared into the dust. No fanfare, no gunshots, just a boy who knew no one was coming to save him. That would be the last time the world saw him as a child. After that, he drifted through mining camps, ranches, river towns. He changed names, learned how to ride, learned how to lie. He stayed alive because he understood something most people didn't. If the world won't give you a name, you steal one. By the time he turned 16, Henry McCarty no longer existed. He would call himself William H. Bonney. And the world, the newspapers, the lawmen, the legends, they would call him Billy the Kid. But before all that, he was just a ghost in the making. A shadow of a boy America never saw coming. Chapter 2. Billy the Kid is born. They gave him a name. He gave them something to fear. After escaping that jail in Silver City, Henry McCarty disappeared. But he didn't go far, just farther into the places the law wouldn't follow. Back then, the New Mexico territory wasn't a place. It was a rumor. Hot wind, dry land, no rules. And it was there that Henry shed his past like a worn-out coat. He called himself William H. Bonney. It sounded proper, noble, almost forgettable. But people didn't forget, because the boy behind that name was changing. He worked odd jobs at first: ranch hand, cattle driver, messenger for men with guns and land and no patience. He watched them, learned from them. He wasn't big, he wasn't strong, but he was fast. And when you're small and poor, speed is survival. One day, a man insulted him. Maybe it was over a poker hand. Maybe it was just a drunken threat. No one remembers the insult, only the outcome. Billy drew his revolver and shot him. It was over in seconds. His first kill. No duel, no warning, no honor. Just instinct, clean, fast, final. That was the day William Bonney became Billy the Kid. They called him Kid because of his bob face, smooth skin, bright eyes, like someone who should have been in a schoolhouse, not holding a smoking gun, but don't let the face fool you. That face had already seen death, betrayal, hunger, and now it had caused all three. The law came after him, but the frontier was wide. Billy moved faster than the warrants could, from one ranch to another, one town to the next. He never stayed in one place too long, never trusted too many hands. Somewhere along the way, he became a gun for hire. Not a criminal, not yet. Just a kid with a steady aim and a price. Cattle rustlers needed protection. Land barons needed intimidation. And Billy needed to survive. The newspapers started to take notice. A boy, they wrote, with the smile of a child and the deadliness of a rattlesnake. He rides like the wind, shoots like a ghost, and vanishes like smoke. It didn't matter if the stories were true. They sold papers. And Billy, he didn't correct them. He knew a good legend when he heard one. And now he was living inside one. Chapter 3. The Lincoln County War. It wasn't a war, it was a reckoning. By 1878, Billy the Kid wasn't just a name. He was a problem. But the real trouble started in Lincoln County, New Mexico. A war was brewing, not between armies, but between two empires. On one side, James Dolan, backed by corrupt politicians and lawmen, controlled the local economy, banking, cattle, supplies. On the other, a newcomer named John Tunstall, young, idealistic, and British, who wanted to build a fair business. Billy ended up working for Tunstall, not because of politics, because for the first time in his life, someone treated him like a human being. Tunstall gave Billy a horse, a rifle, a bed, and maybe more importantly, a sense of belonging. But in Lincoln County, fairness was dangerous. In February 1878, Tunstall was murdered, shot while unarmed by a posse loyal to Dolan. No arrest, no trial, no justice. And that was the moment Billy chose a side. He joined a group called the Regulators, deputized men sworn to bring Tunstall's killers to justice. But justice on the frontier always comes in smoke. The Regulators began hunting down those responsible. Billy was one of the youngest and the quickest to shoot. They ambushed Sheriff William Brady in broad daylight. Billy pulled the trigger. A man fell, riddled with bullets. Just like that, the line between lawman and outlaw blurred, and Billy had crossed it. The newspapers ate it up. The boy outlaw was now the face of a civil war in the desert. Shootings escalated, towns divided, bodies dropped, friends and enemies alike. And in the middle of it all, Billy the Kid, not fighting for gold or land or power, but for a dead man who once gave him a chance. By summer, the Lincoln County War ended with a blaze. Billy and his remaining men holed up in McSween's house, surrounded by dozens of armed enemies. Gunfire erupted. Smoke filled the adobe rooms. The building was set on fire. Billy fought his way out through the flames, revolver in each hand, and vanished into the night. He escaped, but his freedom came with a price. From that day on, he was no longer a regulator. He was an outlaw, not by choice, but by label, stamped by the press, sealed by the courts, hunted by the law. And now, the chase had truly begun. Chapter 4. Outlaw by Design. He didn't create the legend, but he knew how to wear it. After the smoke cleared from the Lincoln County War, Billy the Kid became the most wanted man in New Mexico. Not because he killed the most, not because he stole the most, but because he wouldn't disappear. Billy drifted between ranches and dusty towns, a face too young to fear, but a name that caused sheriffs to check their holsters twice. He wasn't robbing banks or leading gangs. He rustled cattle, played cards, laughed in saloons. People liked him. He was polite, charismatic, even charming. But there was always a gun at his hip, and the law always at his heels. The press made him famous. Headlines called him a baby-faced killer, a serpent with the smile of a schoolboy. They said he'd killed 21 men, one for every year of his life. Was it true? No one knows. And Billy never confirmed it, because he understood something the law didn't. In the Wild West, stories were stronger than bullets, and his story sold papers. He became a symbol of rebellion, youth, defiance. To the powerful, he was dangerous. To the poor, he was thrilling. To others, he was just a boy who kept running. Governors demanded his capture. Posters offered $500, then $1,000 for his arrest. But no one could catch him. He slipped through borders, through towns, through jail cells. Even the ones who chased him couldn't help but admire the way he moved. Like smoke, with a pistol. At one point, Billy wrote letters to the governor, offering to surrender if only they'd promise a fair trial. He even testified against corrupt officers involved in the war. But the system didn't want truth. It wanted a trophy. And so, they kept hunting him. Not just because of what he'd done, but because of what he represented. A kid who defied authority, who wouldn't bow, who refused to disappear, even when the whole world said he should. By now, Billy the Kid was no longer just a boy with a gun. He was a legend with a target on his back, and the man sent to end that legend had once called him a friend. Chapter 5. Garrett, the Friend, turned hunter. Some betrayals don't come from hate. They come from history. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid weren't strangers. They rode the same trails, knew the same faces, shared the same fires on cold desert nights. Before the headlines, before the wanted posters, they were just two men trying to survive the same hard land. But one took the badge, the other took the bullet. By late 1880, the New Mexico Territory had had enough. Governor Lew Wallace, desperate to show control, put a bounty on Billy's head, and he needed someone smart, someone fast, someone who knew Billy. He chose Pat Garrett, tall, quiet, a former buffalo hunter, and now the law. The chase began. Garrett moved carefully, following rumors, whispers, footprints in the sand. Billy stayed one step ahead. He knew the land. He knew the tricks. He knew Garrett. But even legends make mistakes. In December 1880, Billy was caught near Fort Sumner, captured without a shot. It should have been the end. But Billy wasn't a man who ended easily. He was taken to Lincoln County Jail, sentenced to hang for the murder of Sheriff Brady. The date was set, but Billy had his own plan. He waited, watched, memorized every pattern, every guard rotation, every noise in the night. Then he struck. He killed 2 deputies. One shot with a hidden pistol, one bludgeoned with a rifle. He took their weapons, took their horse, and rode out of Lincoln, laughing. It was his greatest escape. And his last. Pat Garrett was humiliated. The newspapers mocked him. His name was now tied to Billy's, not in respect, but in failure. And so Garrett made it personal. He tracked Billy for months through arroyos, saloons, hideouts, ranches, asking old friends, pressuring informants, wearing down every piece of the legend until there was nowhere left to hide. And finally, in July 1881, Garrett heard the whisper. Billy was staying near Fort Sumner, at the home of Pete Maxwell. Garrett didn't wait. He rode through the night, entered the house, sat in the dark, and waited, until footsteps creaked across the floor. A voice spoke, soft and surprised. "Ken S. Who is it?" Garrett didn't answer. He raised his revolver and fired. Billy the Kid, shot in the chest, fell to the floor. Dead. No warning, no duel, just silence. The boy with the baby face was gone. Pat Garrett would go on to write a book, defend his actions, say it was justice. But some say he looked haunted for the rest of his life. Because killing Billy the Kid didn't end the story. It just made the myth impossible to kill. Chapter 6. The Kid Who Wouldn't Die. A bullet stopped his heart, but not his story. They buried Billy the Kid in Fort Sumner, a plain wooden coffin, a dirt grave, a cross with no ceremony, no family, no prayers, just a few curious neighbors and a sheriff too tired to speak. He was 21 years old, dead, but not gone. The country reacted in waves. Some cheered, some mourned, some simply asked, who was he really? Was he a killer? A rebel? A boy who couldn't escape a world built to swallow him? Pat Garrett tried to set the record straight. He published a book, The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid. But it didn't calm the noise, it only amplified it. Because Billy the Kid had become more than a man, he had become a myth. And myths don't die easy. Ballads were written, songs passed from saloon to saloon, porch to porch. They called him the Boy Bandit King. They sang of his smile, his speed, his tragedy. Hollywood came knocking. Actors put on his hat. Directors filmed his duels. Writers rewrote his choices. Every decade brought a new Billy, sometimes ruthless, sometimes romantic, sometimes barely recognizable. In museums, you will find revolvers claiming to be his. Photographs debated for decades. Even bones exhumed and tested. People still argue. Was he really killed that night? Did Pat Garrett shoot the wrong man? Did Billy escape, live out his years in Mexico? You can visit his grave. It's there in Fort Sumner. A white picket fence surrounds it now. Tourists leave coins, bullets, flowers. But they're not visiting a killer. They're visiting an idea. Billy the Kid became America's favorite ghost. A boy lost in the thunder of grown men's wars. A name kept alive not by facts, but by feelings. Because in him, we saw what we wanted. A rebel with charm. A kid who ran faster than justice. A mirror of our own defiance. He was, and still is, everything we never outgrew. He was no hero. He was no monster. He was just a boy. And sometimes, a boy is enough to scare the whole world.